have the plan, but leave the space for the magic and leave the space for the curiosity, even if that means failure.
Do you want to wake up feeling like you're stepping into who you're meant to be, into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome. Hey, yo, welcome back to Hopeful and Wholesome. Today I have on the show Andi Eaton Alleman, and she is the founder of Wee Wee and Wee Wee Studio. She is a conscious creator, author, consultant, podcast host with a mission of inspiring new school approaches to living well. She defines success as a life lived slowly where creation, generosity, impact, and joy are limitless. And her third book, Elemental, Nature-Inspired Rituals to Nourish Your Life, which I just got, by the way, focuses on reconnecting with nature to attain physical, emotional, and spiritual balance. And Andi and I are talking about so many things today, but talking about what it really looks like to consciously create a mindful business. And when she talks about her being a conscious creator, this is what we're talking about. And we're going to dive into this, how she leads with human design. She has got a really incredible journey. And I mean, this girl literally does all things, and she's a Manny Gen, no surprise there. And so we talk about that and how, what it looks like to kind of rein in that manifesting generator energy when you have so many passions and so many things you want to do. And she does all the things. So we're going to dive deep into this and what it looks like to really connect with yourself on every level and let that be what leads you as you're running your life, your business, and kind of creating this, paradigm of wellness that supports you at every level. So let's jump in. All right, y'all, let's jump in. I'm here with Andi, and I'm so excited to have her on. I was on her podcast not too long ago, and we had such a good conversation. And even just chatting before we hit record, we're so aligned. We're both manifesting generators. And so I feel like the Manny Gen energy is flowing. And I just love she's doing so many cool things that we're going to talk about today. So thanks so much for coming on, Andi.
It's so great to be here and to be back with you. And I had such a great time hanging out with you when you came onto my show. So I'm excited to hang out with you here on your show.
Me too. So you are dabbling in all the things, which I know we'll get to, and we have some cool things I want to talk about. But I also just love to hear everybody's journey to get here. And this you're kind of in this wellness coaching. Well, I mean, you're in a bunch of different things. It's the Manny Gen energy flowing, but you're in the wellness space in a bunch of different capacities. And it's not just about like the health, right? So if you can just share kind of your story and what your journey to get to what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in North Carolina. Actually, I was very much like a nature kid. I was in the forests and the mountains, and then we'd go to the beach in the summers. And I just really found a deep connection to nature early. And I was really quite a witchy kid. I was doing stone divination without really knowing that that's what it was. I love that. That was very much my vibe. But I was also with this high Manny Gen energy, was constantly creating, just very interested in what I could make. And that was anything from putting on the neighborhood talent shows or taking flowers and blending up products for my friends. I was doing all of those things as a 9-year-old. And it's not super different from what I've really come back to in my life today. So that was, my childhood. And then I, like many of us, went to school, went to university, and started working in PR. I was working in music PR right out of college, and I've always loved music. My husband's a musician. It was on my vision board that I would be connected to music in some way. So I married a musician. But I was working in music, and then I was recruited by a clean beauty brand at 24 years old to work in sales. And I ended up working for that brand for a decade. I stayed for 10 years and really loved my experience there. Sometimes people ask me, do you wish you hadn't spent so many years in the corporate world? And the reality is I learned so much. I learned
Yeah.
about, the financials of running a business. I learned about sales. I learned about distribution. Within the company, I at one point was running the company's salon and spa. So I was managing 17 teams of people, and I would not take any of that back for the world. I learned so much about just what it would take to build my own business one day. And I wasn't necessarily thinking at that time, oh, I have this deep interest in entrepreneurship, but I was spending a ton of time with entrepreneurs, hairdressers, makeup artists, salon and spa owners that carried the product that I worked with. So I was really inspired by people like that. So when I left my corporate job, it wasn't because there was some big fallout or some moment where I was like, okay, I've burnt myself to the ground and I need to get out of here. It was more of just this awareness that, okay, there's something next for me. And
Right.
I need to allow space to find that. And I'm not going to find that space here, staying in this job. So I did what I felt like it was a really responsible thing. And I saved money for a year. I let my boss know I was going to leave. And I know a lot of people can't do that and get an okay from the boss that, hey, yeah, you can stay for a year and then plan your exit. But I wanted to leave the company in good hands, and I wanted to be in a sound financial place myself before I left with no plan. And I'm a Capricorn rising in astrology. I'm so organized in most areas of my life. And I had to really give myself the directive to not plan what would be next so that I could really let the magic arise. And so I spent that next little while traveling, actually ended up living in Spain for about 6 months right after I left my corporate job. And that really gave me an opportunity to connect deeply to my meditation practice, reconnect with nature. And so all of those things that had been so important to me as a kid started to really come back to me, and my own sense of well-being I just reconnected with it in such a different way from that experience. And so I never considered setting out to be a writer of books. That was not on my list, or a coach of people.
Yeah.
And what did start to happen was I was writing a blog about my travel experiences, about the things I was interested in, about some of the modalities that I was starting to learn about just from my perspective. And it started to really grow. And I discovered after about 2 years of that, really taking that blog writing seriously, that I had quite an audience and I could make some money doing it. And so around, I don't know, 2017 or so, I actually got really serious about, okay, I could actually turn this site into something of incredible value, and I can bring in other contributors, writers, educators. So I started working on that, which became We, which is my blog, but then also what came from that was We Studio, which is our home for personal, professional development, courses, traveling, all sorts of resources, retreats. Retreat travel is the type of travel that we make available through We Studio. And while I was living in Spain that summer, I ended up getting my first book deal, it was a very serendipitous experience. I was really interested in traveling and writing. I was writing the blog, I was traveling, and I was thinking, how can I make this my job next? I wasn't making enough money with the blog to make that a full thing yet. And so I just kind of put that out there as an intention of, this is what I want to do. I ended up getting an email from a woman who was an editor at a publishing house. And she said, hey, we want to have a conversation with you about a book. I'm thinking they want to ask me a question to be quoted in someone else's book. And they're like, hey, would you be interested in writing a book? And I was like, oh, this is absolutely, don't know how to write a book. I've never taken on something like this, but, they were very willing to help me and work with me. And so I ended up getting a really nice book deal, and that ended up paying for my ability to travel for the next year and travel, write, grow the blog. And that set me on a path to starting to really consider just how intention setting and getting really action oriented, but in a way in which you're just leaving space open for
Mm-hmm.
the magic to arise, like really getting intentional about how that process had manifested for me and how I could continue to create experiences like that for myself. And then the coaching piece came from that. It was not like I was putting out packages and saying, hey, let me coach you in building your book or your blog or your business. I just started to find that women who I was building relationships with through the blog or through other means were reaching out and saying, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing with this. Would you mind are you available for a conversation? And so now, of course, that's been quite a few years. And now the it's a bit more of a container, it's not just an email here and there. It's definitely something a bit more serious.
Yeah.
But, along the way, it was very much just following the breadcrumbs and seeing what unfolded and seeing what resonated with people. And that's ultimately how I was able to grow a business.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh, such a cool story. And I love that you were saying you're a planner, but you had to leave room, leave space for things to happen. And I think that's so hard for people because, I mean, it's just as humans, we're like, like we have this and we have this and we have this, and it's so hard to leave that space. And I'm guilty of that too. Like, what is I don't know if there's like the key is the word, but what is it that's allowed you? Because and what the other things too, that you had all these serendipitous things that happen where these things just kind of happen, right? And you just kind of, like you said, you follow the breadcrumbs. What has been for you the thing that's allowed you to like be okay with like watching the unfolding?
I've talked about this a lot, and it's something I think I got good at really early. I am really okay with failure, really okay with it. And I recognize that failure is not a reflection on me as a human being. And that is a really hard thing for people.
Super.
It's so hard. And it didn't occur to me until much later that is something I've always been okay with, that I've always considered failure to be just a version of curiosity. If I try this, what happens? If I try this, what happens? If I go down this road, what might be there? Okay. And if I get down that road and it's a roadblock, that's cool. It's just a maze. And I just go the other direction. So, I think when most people start to internalize what failure might mean and then take that internalization and make it a story about themselves. I've never been that way. I've always been like, all right, I can just pick myself up and go a different direction. No big. It's not a reflection of who I am. It's just me being curious. And so that has helped me tremendously. And I there were things I was doing after I quit my corporate job. I opened a vintage shop at one point, like a brick and mortar. I ran it for a year, which was fun. And then I was like, I can't travel and write and run a shop.
Do that.
Like, like, what is this about? Yes, I love vintage clothing. I also was carrying like independent designers, and I wanted to support design. So I had this like whole idea of like what the impact was that I was going to do with the store. But then I was like, from a practical business sense, I got to be here every day. Right. And that's not going to work for me. So when I closed the doors, there were folks that were like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened. Like that the shop failed. I'm like, oh no, the shop didn't fail.
You're like, no, I chose to. Yeah.
It was like a thing I did for a year, and it was me exploring. And like, was it a little bit of a costly curiosity? Sure. But if I hadn't done it, I would have wondered what would have happened. Right. So that's very much just been a way for me to have the plan, but leave the space for the magic and leave the space for the curiosity, even if that means failure.
Yeah, that's huge. And that's a big one for me. And I found as like digging in deep into myself, that's been a huge piece, because I feel like there's been some instances, like for me, when I left my, like, I'm using air quotes, my regular job to, run my business, I didn't do what you did. I wasn't like, oh, I'll save up and I was just like, oh, I'm done. Let's see what happens. And so for me, there's been instances where I can see like, I'm just going to jump and see what happens. But then I find that there's other instances where, like you're talking about, where it's like the fear of disappointment is like, well, do I want to do that? Because what if it doesn't work? And then, so that's a huge piece. And it's, as a 3, are you a 3-5? Me too. I was going to say, as a 3-5, this is how we operate. But I found there's been, resistance that comes up here and there for me, and letting that go and just like fully embracing like the experimenter piece of that. But even for those who aren't a 3-5, I mean, just as humans, like we have to give our space this self,
Mhm.
ourselves the space to fail. And, you know, again, air quotes, like you're saying, like, it's just, I don't know. And I think that's the thing, the connotation of like, oh, it was a failure or it was an expensive failure, is an expensive lesson. Like, well, it's a lesson. So I just, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, you got to get them, and it's like they're going to come one
mm-hmm,
way or another.
mm-hmm,
So my feeling is like, I don't do things in an irresponsible way,
right.
but I am, if there's something I'm feeling called to try, I'm like, I'm going to do it, and
Yeah.
I'm going to figure out the best approach to this.
Mm-hmm,
And I very much practice the done is better than perfect
mm-hmm,
approach. And the times when I haven't practiced that, when I've really tried to achieve perfection before sharing something with the world or creating it or putting it out, whatever that might be, those are the times where I look back and I'm like, I should have done this a long time ago. What was I
mm-hmm.
waiting for?
Yep,
So, I
totally.
think those are things that we as women, we can get especially critical of ourselves. We can be so hard on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And, as cliche as it may sound, we don't got a lot of time on this planet. So, let's do what we can to like get out of that critical mindset and give ourselves a little bit of trust and grace and give things a try.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And really explore the potentiality, because I think that's it. It's like, and I think, you know, when our soul is telling us to make those jumps and make those leaps, like your soul can see the potential that's available. And then your mind's like, wait, but no, it's not safe. So yeah, I think just being able to explore that potentiality is huge. Okay. So
Yeah.
for your book, I want to talk about your book.
Mhm.
Can you, I'll just let you can you just tell us a little bit about what the book is and what it teaches us?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a book of rituals. It's for wellness enthusiasts and wellness novices alike. It's just really about disconnecting from the speed of the world, the digital pace, and reconnecting with nature with the intention of finding practices that are going to better your health and create some just good, juicy self love, self care, and more ultimately inner peace. And so the practices are anything from rituals that you can do without any tools or with no extra expense, just things you can do with what you have in your home, to exercises and reminders of what's available to us just out in nature, to recipes that you can make with things that are probably already in your pantry, both for teas, tinctures, things of that sort, but also recipes you can make for your skin, for your body, just really fun things to help you take a little bit better care of yourself. So it's everything from like meditations and breathwork practices, grounding and balance practices, and then those recipes and exercises, all leaning into the elements, the ultimately the five elements: fire, earth, water, air, and ether. And so in the book, there's multiple directions that you can take to decide which element you really want to tap more deeply into. And then those practices are all built around each of those five elements.
I love that. And that's what I wanted to ask you, because I find that so interesting. Can you, and you don't have to go into detail on all of them, but can you kind of, I guess, elaborate on that piece just a little bit more, and how we can, like, because there's different energy, right, that each of these elements has. And so how we can kind of incorporate that energy into what we're doing with kind of daily wellness practices.
Yeah. So in the book, I have an elemental quiz, and the quiz will give you some insight into your natural elemental
Mm,
constitution. So that's your body, your emotional and your spiritual state of being. All of that stuff is in constant flux. So you may have a need right now to do some like really juicy water practices. Maybe you've got a little bit of extra fire going on emotionally or in your body, or maybe just from like the climate that you're hanging out in. Maybe, you're where you're living, it's 101
mhm.
degrees and you just
Yeah,
need a
like
little
here.
bit of, yeah. I know that's like a lot of the country right now. So, if that's the case, you may lean into those fire or air practices, for example. And then I use yogic technology, so rituals including pranayama and mudra and mantra and asanas, and then Ayurveda, so the Ayurvedic doshas, and then astrology too, because of course, those of us that are practitioners of astrology, we believe that each zodiac sign is associated with an element as well. So you may have some of that if you're Pisces. Maybe you've got a little bit more water. If you're a Leo like me with a Capricorn rising, maybe you're a little bit more fire, earth. So there's all of that is brought into the book. So you have lots of ways you can make decisions about which practices you want to tap into. But really the best way is to just try some things out, see what's resonating with you, and then go deeper into those parts of the book, those particular elements of the book.
Yeah. I love that. That's so fascinating to me. And I love anything that incorporates Ayurveda. I'm all about. I'm just so fascinated with Ayurveda, and which is, kind of talks about the elements and stuff. So I love all of that you're tying into all of those elements. So when we're looking at, you're building in all these wellness practices in your book, and you're going into depth and building this kind of making it like a natural thing, right? These rituals that we incorporate into our lives just, on a regular basis. How do we know? I guess I'd love your take on this. How do we know? Because I think sometimes people get caught up, and I have to, talk with my clients on this piece too, because they want to know, like, what's the right thing? Like, what's the right thing for me? And so what is your take on that? And just really like learning what the quote right thing is for you, and how to make it, how to be consistent with it.
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I was in a mastermind group yesterday, and we were talking about synchronicities and intuition. And one of the gals asked, like, how do I know if it's a synchronicity, or if I'm just like making up that it has meaning, or how do I know if it's my intuition, or if it's just like me deciding that this is what I actually think I should do. And so I'm telling myself it's an intuitive hit, but it's really just my ego telling me to do this thing. It can be really, really tough, right? So I think, where we can start is and this is really one of the things I wanted to lean into in the book, is that to create a paradigm of wellness for ourselves, to support our own well-being, we have to slow down and tune in. And there is not necessarily something that's right for you that's going to be right for me or for the next person. And so when we get this like bombardment of, oh, this is the way, or this is how you improve this part of your health, whether it's your emotional or mental state or your physical well-being, when we're only listening to outside sources and not tuning in, not giving ourselves that time to listen to what really is going on within us, which is one of the reasons I love human design so much, is we learn how to make decisions, and what parts of our energetic makeup can help us to tune more deeply into our own best decision making. Yep. So I think, learning those practices, learning to reconnect with yourself, learning what really lights you up and what leaves you truly feeling physically, emotionally, and spiritually balanced, that is the way. And it's, of course, not as easy as it, as I'm making it sound. That is some deep work you have to do to really learn to trust yourself in that way. But when you can do that, and when you start to nourish yourself in a way that's holistic and whole, and when you're creating a synergy between yourself and the natural world around you, you start to be able to do that a little bit easier.
Yeah, it's so true. And I love that, like you were talking about when you were a kid and how you were like, a nature kid. And I feel like you have always had that, because I feel like when you can really, and as woo or whatever as it sounds, when you can really connect with nature, not like you have to go, hike in the woods every day, but when you can really connect with nature, I feel like that's such a huge portal of tuning into your own intuition, right? I've found that in my own life, and especially over the past few years, because I was saying, as a kid, I was like that too. And at some point I got away from that and just working all the time and not taking the time to connect with nature and get outside and be with nature. And I found that especially the past few years, like really understanding the value of that and understanding like how that really does connect you with yourself.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, think about when people go and sit and watch a sunset, like there is an energy transformation that happens to almost everyone that goes and sits and watches a sunrise or a sunset. It's just, it just happens. And it's not like you sit down and you're told, all right, as the sun begins to come over the hill, you're going to feel this like sense of awe and wonder. And you're going to like feel this vibration, this higher vibration of happiness, joy. No one has to tell you that. No matter if you're like 4 years old or 60 years old, it just happens. So why wouldn't we do more of that? Knowing that that's a way to quickly shift our energetic frequency, we should do more of that. And, we can't necessarily do it every day, but there are things that most of us can do, whether that's just like going and standing outside and like putting our eyes to the sun for 5 minutes in the morning. Don't go burn your eyeballs, but you know what I mean? Like go get some sunlight,
get the red light,
get the stuff going, go put your feet in the grass, whatever, stay hydrated, do the things that like are naturally available to us. And, we're like hiring, most of us, myself included, experts, coaches, healers, therapists, mentors. And usually they're going to give you a recommendation of one of two things. Look inward, so practice mindfulness, meditation, journaling, or get outside and experience the vibrancy of the world, whether that's an art museum or a forest or a park or a sunset. So knowing those things are so available to most of us, you don't have to go like sign up for like the fancy wellness gym to get those things. You can if you want, but the reality is we can give ourselves a lot of this stuff. It's just there. We just have to make a commitment to ourselves to do it.
Yep. It's so true. It's so true. As we start to wrap up here, I don't want to let you leave before talking about your skincare line that you're launching, because by the time this goes out, I feel like it'll be closer to like, when everything is launching. And in true Manny Jen fashion, Andi has all the things. So she literally is launching another brand. So can you tell us about your skincare line?
Yeah, for sure. It does feel really full circle to be creating this product since, my very first like big girl job was when I started in the beauty industry when I was in my early 20s. So feels really, really full circle. The brand is called Casa Noon. You can find it on Instagram at Casa Noon Beauty. And we are launching with a 3-piece skincare collection. It's for the woman who wants to be outside, who wants to be in the natural elements. It's designed to nourish your skin. It's an AM moisturizer, multitasking all day, anytime serum when you've just want to give yourself a little extra glow, and perhaps you've been out in the elements and just want to give yourself a little bit of extra nourishment. And then a night balm, so a really delicious balm to sleep in and heal your skin at night. And it's using fermented fruits and mushrooms as the primary ingredients in the whole collection. So it's just it's something that I was really interested in creating for myself first and foremost. And, I travel a lot and I was like, what are like the main things I need? Okay. I need a good moisturizer, a serum that can do a lot, that can take my makeup off, that I can like apply throughout the day when I need a little bit of like a touch up, that sort of feeling, and then something to sleep in. And so I created the collection for ultimately that reason. And I really believe it's like, we don't need 12-step skincare routines. Our skin can do so much to take care of itself if we're just taking care of ourselves. And so I wanted it to be a minimalist collection with maximal efficacy done in a really beautiful and holistic way. So
I love that so much. I am in. So I am all about simplicity. Yay. So I will be a customer because this is what I need. I just need bam, bam, bam. And that's all I need. That's perfect. I'm good to go. Yes. Yeah. I love that so much. Well, and I love that you're putting the fermented fruits and I'm so fascinated by the ingredients. So it's super exciting.
Yeah. The ingredients are really great. I had an opportunity to work with some chemists out of Australia who I felt like were just really aligned to the way I was thinking about creating this. So it's taken a couple of years to get it all right, but it's really close to being ready to share.
Yay. I can't wait. Super exciting. Okay. So before I ask you the last question I like to ask everybody as we leave, can you just let everybody know where they can find out more about you and all of the 5 bazillion things that you're doing in the world?
Yeah, for sure. So the blog is Wee Wee Girl. It's also my Instagram handle. It's we, like the French word. Yes. We, like you and me. So OUIWEGIRL. And then the studio is Wee Wee Studio. So you can find everything there. You can find a link to the book there. The book is called Elemental. And you'll find the skincare collection there too. So perfect. Those are the places.
I love it. All right. And of course, I'll have links to all that in the show notes, so I can go check all of that out. So Andi, the last question I want to leave you with, or leave the audience with, what do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
To live with purpose. I think just, some of the things we've talked about already today, really reconnecting to the nature of who you truly are and what lights you up every day. And when we do that, when we're living for that little inner child version of ourselves, when we're finding the joy in life again, like we did so many of us when we were just like little tiny people, that is when our purpose truly begins to manifest in our lives.
I agree. I love it. Thank you so much, Andi. Thanks for sharing your time and all of these gifts that you're giving the world. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I'd love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I can know how to provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics you'd like to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's @TheHopePedraza, or you can visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.